Hello everyone, my name is Angela and I'm here today to talk about what it's like to grow up in a toxic narcissistic family. It is believed that I have two narcissists in the family. One can go around and label people as a narcissist because they exhibit some narcissistic traits, but in order to really be labeled a narcissist, a person has to be diagnosed by a mental health professional and undergo a series of psychiatric testing. We all have narcissistic traits, but people who have this disorder are extremely toxic to another person's well-being. Anyone who's in their immediate family is affected by the narcissism in an extremely negative way. I had suffered from depression for many years. I have had a complete nervous breakdown in the year 2000, which required hospitalization due to what had happened was I had almost jumped out of the third-story window of my home at the time to my death. These people are no joke. They will psychiatrically torture you to the point where you can become suicidal. This is narcissism. Okay, now to explain. A narcissistic family has a cast of characters, okay? You have the narcissist. In my family, it was my mother and my dad's brother, my uncle. You have the enablers. The enablers were my grandmother on my dad's side, who was the huge enabler, and my grandmother on my mother's side, who was also an enabler. My grandmother on my mother's side, I believe, was greatly responsible for my mother to become a narcissist because she showed favoritism towards my mother's only sibling, which was my uncle. I did not witness this behavior because he was killed in a car accident in 1967. Anyway, I want to get to the point. I want to discuss the issue about narcissism. Okay, then you have the other players, the children of the narcissist. The children are either the scapegoat, which is me, the lost children, which were my two sisters, and the golden child, which was my brother. Okay, my brother was the oldest, the only boy, and he was definitely the golden child because he was a proxied abuser of the narcissist, as well as a person who got a bit better treatment. Although he was abused as well, he definitely was the golden child. My dad was extremely codependent, and he mirrored some of her narcissistic traits, but he was not, I would say, a narcissist, full-blown narcissist, because he did have empathy and he did have compassion, and I do believe that he loved us children as best as he could. So no, he was not a narcissist, but he was extremely codependent because he did not know how to escape the relationship. He just was it was just so toxic. It's very difficult to explain the nature of their relationship. But this video, I want to focus on my relationship with my mother. Okay, now I have done videos on this subject before, but deleted them because I just didn't format them to pinpoint the narcissism and the relationship. And I wanted to better explain so that you, the person who's watching this video, will understand what it's like to be a child of a narcissist. Okay. My mother, in the early years of my life, had a very strong sense of entitlement. She had exhibited both the narcissistic personality disorder as well as histrionic personality disorder, as well as an obsessive compulsive hoarding disorder. Very toxic combination of problems. In the early years of my life, my mother was not affectionate to me, and it is believed that the reason why was because my mother had a very strained and resentment towards her mother, my grandmother. And it is believed that I look like my grandmother or like her mother, and she didn't really like her mother, so I basically became the scapegoat. Anyway, so let's talk about one of the traits, sense of entitlement. My mother felt that she was entitled to her children taking care of her, not the other way around. I'm talking children of tender years, meaning children 6, 7, and 8 years old. My brother is 8. Okay, my brother was in charge of child care, after school child care, and you know, he was abusive. This was inappropriate for him to be watching his 2 younger sisters, but that's the way it was. He was the golden child, and he was a proxy of the narcissist. Okay. He was physically abusive, and I'll get more into that in another video. But let me just go back to staying on focus with my mom. Okay, she used to get up in the morning, and it would be early in the morning on a winter day, and she would decide around about an hour or 2 before we're ready to go to school that she was going to wash our school uniforms. We went to a Catholic school, and you had to wear a uniform. Well, it's the middle of January, and it should have been done the night before when she came home from work, but she decided for some reason to do it the next morning. So as a result, the uniforms were not dry, and it would be freezing cold outside, and we would have to go to school wearing a wet uniform. Okay, we would be standing on the corner waiting for the trolley car, because we went to a school that was not nearby, in the freezing cold waiting for that trolley car. It was a less than pleasurable experience. Now, one might say, well, you know, your mother probably just fell asleep from working long hours, and it happens, you know, people make mistakes. Yes, but they don't make that mistake over and over and over again. No. The reason why she did what she did was because it was her way of punishing us for having that need of clean clothes. Okay? That was her way of punishing us. It was cruel. The second thing she did was she used to go to work from 8:30 in the morning to 6:30 at night. And she really enjoyed her job. Her job was she worked in an office environment, and it was not really difficult. It was basically data entry. Okay? In my opinion, a trained monkey can do data entry. She was not capable of doing a position where you had to think about what you're doing. Like, for example, in the present day, I'm a legal assistant, and a legal assistant has a lot of responsibility. You have to know the appropriate motions, the type, and deal with different things with minimal supervision. My mother could never do my job. Okay? she didn't have that type of mentality. Another thing that I want to point out is the fact that she was very histrionic in her personality at inappropriate times. And let me give you an example of that. Let's say we were at a family function, and it was, the best example I could use would be a funeral. She would have to be the center of attention to the point where you're at the funeral and you're sitting there, and the deceased, you're sitting in the funeral home and the deceased is there, and she's sitting there striking up a conversation, making the conversation totally about herself, disregarding and disrespecting, totally oblivious to the fact that you're here because someone has died. Okay? Instead of like mourning the deceased, the conversation would be totally about herself, and she would be laughing and joking and acting silly. I don't know how many times my father used to complain and say, she makes an ass out of herself everywhere she goes. This is a narcissistic trait. It's all about me, 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 me. It's to the point where it's so inappropriate, it's disturbing. And because of that reason, people didn't like her. They saw her as a silly, immature, goofy person that lacked compassion and empathy. So this is what you've got to deal with when you're dealing with a narcissist. Another thing that I want to say about the narcissist, my narcissistic mother, is her childlike personality and what it was like having to deal with it. There are going to be times where children just really work your nerves. You know, kids are like silly bumpkins. They're playful, they're unruly, they get restless. They're kids. All children are like this. And I remember one time when I was about 8 years old, when I got on my mother's nerves. I don't know what it was about. I don't remember that aspect of it, but there is one aspect I do remember. She had gotten to the point where she was out of control in a rage. And she said to me, "I hate you. I wish you were never born, you little son of a bitch. I should have had an abortion instead of having you." And I turned around and I said, "Well, you know what? I don't know why you even had kids. Why? Like, I didn't ask to be born. Why'd you even have me?" Her answer was, I'm like, "I didn't ask." So I said to her, "I didn't ask to be born." Her response was, "Neither did I." So, do you see the narcissism in that response? A normal mother, if she sees that what she says is hurting her child, would snap back in reality and be like, "Oh my God, that was such a terrible thing to say. I didn't mean it. I'm sorry." But this was not her response. Her response was, "Neither did I." She had a very strong sense of entitlement to the point where it was expected for us to serve her needs. And most of the family meals, a lot of the times, if you got a family meal, were provided by my grandmothers, because my grandmothers at the time, in the early years, lived nearby. We just found a way to get to her house, you know, because we were hungry, we wanted food. And, you know, if it's a holiday meal, she would go over my grandmother's house, my dad's mom, sit there and enjoy all the food that my grandmother worked so hard to prepare. And I'm not talking about food that came out of a box, like a box cake or something. I'm talking about everything made 100% from scratch, because that's what the old people did in those days. And never lifting a finger to help her clean up, never lifting a finger to help her prepare the food, never lifting a finger to set the table, never lifting a finger to say thank you or to be nice. After she sat there and ate the food the way she did, she would get up from the table, leave her dish right where it was, go sit on the couch and fall asleep. And I was expected to clear the table and help my grandparents clean up. And believe me, let me tell you something, I resented it. Not because I didn't want to help my grandmother, but because I saw the way this woman treated my grandmother and me. It's like, I'm thinking, you know, at 8 years old, why do I have to do this? She doesn't even care if I have clean clothes to go to school, or if I'm fed when she comes home from work, because when she did come home from work, she had eaten out. It was not her problem if her children ate or needed their homework done, or if they needed their clothes washed, or if they needed to be fed. There was no food. Most of the time, it was always cereal we ate. Anyway, so that's why I resented it. And then, on top of that, you know what she used to do? Because she was jealous of her mother-in-law. People who didn't know the whole story, let's say acquaintances, she would slander my grandmother, her mother-in-law. She would slander her to the point where she made people believe that my grandmother was a terrible human being. But yet, she still went over to her house and used her for everything that she could use her for, because she felt that she was entitled to that. This is what these people do. They're highly toxic. They have no empathy. They have a very strong sense of entitlement. And they are just rotten to the core. They're toxic to your mental health. Over the years, it just got worse and worse and worse, to the point where I didn't even realize it, that I was conditioned to serve a narcissistic mother. And I didn't even realize what the problem was, what was causing my depression and suicidal tendencies, until after the suicide attempt, you know, and going to therapy for a couple years, still wasn't really understanding what the problem was. The therapist would say, you know, maybe you could just, she's not, you know, you have to mourn the loss that your mother isn't who she is, and just maybe go out to lunch with your mother. Just do lunch. No, sorry, that wasn't the solution. The solution was, I wanted to get answers. I wanted to know why I was sick with depression, and I wanted to understand why my mother treated me like this. I didn't want a therapist to say, well, you know, you should do this and you should do... No. It was critical for me to get well by understanding what narcissism is and what to do about it. And that didn't happen until I got tired of being depressed. I got tired of not having a fulfilling life. I got tired of simply going through life as a very hollow and broken human being. It negatively affected my relationships as an adult. And it just, I needed help. So what I did was, I got into the point where I went on the internet, did some research, found a doctor who was a psychiatrist who had a PhD in psychiatry and who was an expert in treating mental illness. And I went there. When I sought out this doctor, I explained to him why I was so upset. The thing was, as an adult, her hoarding had gotten really out of control, and there was a lot of fighting with regard to the hoarding. And I had gone there to talk to the doctor to see if I could get some help. Forget about her going. She was never the problem. It was always everybody else. To make a long story short, after I got a series of psychiatric tests from this doctor and the information that I had provided to him, he had determined that the best treatment for me would be to understand the narcissistic personality disorder and to help me to break away, to get me to the point where there would be no contact anymore. It's not easy for a child of a narcissist to go no contact. It's extremely difficult, and I'll tell you why. To go no contact, and I'm speaking specifically to you, the children of narcissists. If you are a child of a narcissist, it's very hard to go no contact, because then you have to admit to the reality that you were never loved by your mother or your father. It's not an easy thing to do. But if you're watching my video, I'm telling you this. If your mother or your father is a narcissist, they do not love you. They will never love you. They will never change. And the only way that you will ever have any type of quote-unquote mentally healthy life is to go no contact forever. That means no telephone calls, no emails. They can't know where you live. They can't get in contact you by any means whatsoever. It's like you dropped off. It's like you're in the witness protection program. That's what I had to do with my mother. In the present day, she's in a nursing home. She is 73 years old. She's in a nursing home. And I have an older sister who's mentally challenged who goes and visits her. She's not affected by my mother's narcissism because she's mentally challenged. And her caregiver will take her from time to time to go visit my mother. And my mother, it's like she's just basically gotten on with her life. She does not feel any remorse or empathy or loss or hurt or anything with regard to the relationship being discontinued. To her, it's like, oh well. That's it. Matter of fact, it hurt me tremendously to come to understanding the reality of the relationship, that there was no bonding, no love, no tenderness, no caring, no nothing. This is not normal. But this is a narcissist. And I appreciate you watching my video, and if you have any questions, I'm here to help you. I will do what I can to answer any of your questions, but one last thing I want to say before I end this video is, if you are involved with a narcissist, please, for your own mental health, seek mental health treatment, because you need to get away from them. They're too toxic. Thanks for watching.